This is Sean Gaithright's attorney speaking in the penalty phase of the Julio unaliving. And she's fighting for him today, and I'll let y'all hear her in a minute. But I kind of want to give you a recap what happened today. Today in court, about 5 people took the stand: Sean Gaithright's uncle, Sean Gaithright's grandmother, Sean Gaithright's friend, and Sean Gaithright's tutor and life coach. We'll start with the grandmother. No 70-year-old woman should have to be looking at your grandson who is looking at spending, he at 20 years old, he's looking at spending more time in prison than he's been alive. She has fond memories of him, as does his uncle. They said Sean had a sense of humor. He tricked them into eating alligator. One of his co-workers and friends said that, him and Sean did typical stuff. Their birthdays are like 5 days apart, and they went skydiving. They used to work at restaurants that were nearby each other. And he just gave everybody talk fondly of Sean. His tutor / life coach said that, Sean as a mixed kid had trouble adjusting, but he did adjust. He said that as part of this group, they traveled the world, went to South Africa and all these countries. And he said that, Sean, he's still in contact with Sean. I believe there are only 2 choices in this case. There is the penalty, the D penalty, and then there is life without parole. I'm gonna go ahead and say this: if it was me, and I want to give love and honor to Sandrika Foolio's mother. She didn't deserve this. But I will say this: I do not believe in the death penalty because it's not equally administered. It's administered to people of color. And I can see each defendant getting life without parole. I mean, life, but I would say life with parole. And I would say in the case of Sean Gathright and Elisa Andrews, because they didn't have a prior criminal record and no telling what they was involved in, but nothing, they didn't have a record. And so that's the reason for those 2. For Isaiah Chance or Gutta, he was a gang member, but because of his circumstances, his life growing up in these hard streets, I would say life with parole, maybe after 35 years. Same with the Murphy brothers. The Murphy brothers are 30 years old, so they older, you know what I mean? They older and should know better, but because of their circumstances, I would say life with the possibility of parole after 35 years. Tell me if you agree with that. I know that's not the easiest thing people want to hear. And can I honestly say that if it was one of my loved ones, that I would want them to get life with. This was a heinous crime, and I can only imagine. This was a heinous crime, and I can only imagine what was how Sandrika Foolio's mom is doing. I know there's a lot, or they say there's a lot of interaction on the live and going on this side and dissing going on that side, on the live and going on that side. But at the end of the day, there are no winners in this situation. And I want y'all to look. I'm gonna let y'all hear Sean Gaithright's attorney, and she is fighting for his life. She is fighting for his life. And he was in court today. They must have told him when people speak fondly of him to smile, because he was in court smiling today. He had on like his little I'm a preppy student sweater, and they must have also coordinated that. But that's what you got to do when you're trying to save someone's life. I also saw with the judge asking, I think it was one of the attorneys, about the conditions of prison. And I mean, prison, it sounds horrific. So there are no winners. There are no winners. When they jumped out with those AK-47s, they wasn't winning. Foolio wasn't winning. There are no winners in this case, and it's tragic. Thanks for listening to the Blessed or Messy channel. I'm blessed. Some of y'all is blessed, but some of y'all is messy too. I'm going to let y'all hear Sean Gaithright's attorney full opening statement today, okay? Tell me what y'all think. Leave comments and everything. Our videos, they don't get the views, but other people's videos get all the views. Like and comment, subscribe.
Good afternoon. Members of the jury, we first want to thank you for your attention and your thoughtful, thorough consideration in the case so far. We all understand the significance of what you have done and what we're asking you to do. I ask that you continue to listen intently and give this second phase of the trial the same attention that you did the first. We saw you taking notes, listening. We know it's been a long several weeks. Nothing in this phase is intended to diminish the seriousness of the charge or what happened in this case. The pain caused, the value of the life lost. Mitigation and mitigating factors are not an excuse. They're an explanation. They tell a story. This is the part of the trial about Sean Gathright, about the person. And this is not about asking if Mr. Gathright is guilty or not guilty. You have already found that with your verdict, and we respect your verdict. This phase asks a different question, and it's not even whether or not Mr. Gathright should be held accountable. He will be. The question now is, should this very young man be permanently sentenced to death, or does he have a life worth saving? During this phase, you're going to hear about who Mr. Gathright was before the events that you've heard about in this trial. You're going to hear about a childhood that was marked with some instability due to being in a military family, repeated separations from his parents, some abuse by his father, loss, absence of steady guidance during some of his most formative years. You're going to hear that Mr. Gathright was barely 18 years old at the time of this crime, the youngest, at an age where society, common sense, and the law itself recognize that judgment, impulse control, and decision-making are still developing. He's still maturing. As he sits here today, he's only 20 years old. The evidence is going to show you that Sean Gathright is not a man beyond hope or beyond redemption, but a very young human being, still capable of growth, maturity, accountability, remorse, and change. You're going to hear some other really important things, and you're going to hear from people that know him best. You're going to hear from several of Mr. Gathright's family, friend, guidance counselor, and they're going to tell you about a loving, respectful, nonviolent young man that they knew. A smart student, a good student, who loved his family, was a good uncle, helped others, did mission trips, fed the homeless, worked hard, built a business, and showed great potential for a meaningful future. You're also going to hear from an expert who's going to tell you that even in prison, Mr. Gathright can live a constructive life where he can continue to mature and positively affect others, including his family and friends who he maintains a relationship with, but also other inmates. And he can be held accountable without ending his life. At the end of this phase, I will get back up here and I'm going to ask you to consider all of the circumstances that will be presented in that evidence. And I'll give you a long list of things that I think have been shown at that time. I'm going to ask you to not define Mr. Gathright solely by the worst thing that he's done at 18 years old, but to recognize that he still has meaning. His life still has value. Death is never required, and Sean Gathright has a life worth saving. Thank you.